Did I hear you're shopping for a car? Because I've been at it for ages. Ugh, such a time suck, right?
Not really. I bought it on Carvana. Super convenient.
Oh, then comes all the financing, research. Am I right?
Well, you can, but I got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, but then all the number crunching and terms, right?
Nope. I saw real numbers as I shopped, found my dream car, and got it in a couple of days.
Wait, like you already have it?
Yep.
Oh.
Go to Carvana.com to finance your car the convenient way.
Well, we got a minute. I'm gonna buy that truck I've been wanting.
Wait, don't you need like weeks to shop for a car?
I don't. Carvana makes it super convenient to find exactly what I want.
Hold up. You're buying a car on your phone? Isn't that more of a laptop thing?
You can shop wherever you want.
I like to do my research, read reviews, compare models. Plus, Carvana has thousands of options. How'd you decide on that truck?
Because I like it.
Oh, that is a great reason.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
It's July 22nd, 1587, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
In the 1580s, the English colonization of North America wasn't going great. So far, every attempt at forming a settlement had withered and died. And the one that arrived in North Carolina today in history in 1587 didn't get off to a great start either, when the ship's pilot dumped his cargo of settlers not at their planned destination in Chesapeake Bay, but on an island whose name would soon become infamous to generations of mystery hunters, Roanoke.
Yeah, Roanoke Island was only meant to be a stopping point on the voyage so that the cartographer John White could hopefully make contact with a very small garrison that had been left on the island after the departure of one of those previous unsuccessful colonization attempts. But, as you say, the flotilla's captain, Simon Fernandez, said that because the summer was rapidly coming to an end, he was just going to have to leave them where they were, and so they were left in Roanoke Island. All they found there when they went to check in on this garrison were the remnants of this previous colony, with the fort dismantled and houses abandoned, and the only trace of the men who were left there was human remains believed to be one of them, suggesting that they'd met with a pretty grim end indeed.
Yeah, suspicions which were then proven to be correct when John White, via his friendly native Chief Manteo, discovers the lost 15 men had been killed by hostile tribes. But the story for John White was personal as well as political, because yes, he was on a mission from the Queen to bring the English Bible to the Americas, but also he brought along on this day, amongst those 117 men, women and children, his pregnant daughter Eleanor. And as they remained there on this part of Roanoke, they had a baby, Virginia, the first English child born on American soil.
Yeah, and this expedition was really different in a lot of ways from the failed one that had gone before. While the previous colony was just military men, this one was, as you mentioned, men, women and children. And the previous expedition had been, it was basically, they'd created a fortress and it had been run along military lines. They had treated the indigenous people with a lot of hostility and suspicion and often brutality. Whereas this one, they had brought along Manteo, as you mentioned, to be their interpreter. So there was a real attempt to try and do this one a bit better. And they needed to. There was a lot of pressure on this colony because there was real dwindling enthusiasm among English investors in the venture, including Sir Walter Raleigh. He'd been one of the leading proponents who'd financed the previous expedition. He was financing this one, but at this point he was £30,000 down in 1587 money, and he had nothing to show for it. And he was really running out of time because Queen Elizabeth had granted him a charter for colonising North America, essentially, but it stated he needed to have got a proper colony off the ground by 1591. So he only had 4 years left before his permit would expire and somebody else would get a crack at it. So he had tried to make this one different. You know, he sent men, women and children. He was like, this time, please don't piss off the natives and have them turn around and kill you. And he had wanted this settlement to be optimistically called the City of Raleigh. You know, this one was going to be different. And after a month, it was decided that White should return to England while the weather was still okay to get supplies and reinforcements, because they did still ultimately intend to make their way up to Chesapeake Bay and found the colony in the place that they had been told to. And so White set out at the end of August.
Yes, and before he departs, he says to the settlers that he leaves behind, if you need to leave in a hurry, carve a cross into a tree so that we are notified, the English, something has happened to you. If it isn't suspicious, then carve the name of the place you're voluntarily going to into a tree. And then if I come back in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, I will understand where you are and under what circumstances you've been transported there.
Anyway, I'm sure it's all going to be fine. Toodle pip, bye.
Yeah, so he arrives in England in November, starts amassing a flotilla that's going to set out in the spring. You know, the problem is that in May of 1588, the Spanish Armada set out. White was then prohibited from leaving. All that summer, the battle between the two navies raged, and then the following year saw the lesser-known English Armada. And all of this meant that there was no way for White to get back to America with the supplies until 1590. When he stepped foot on Roanoke again, it was his granddaughter's 3rd birthday. He came ashore and there were a few clues that hinted at trouble. The houses had been dismantled. The settlement had been refortified with a palisade, which is basically a wall of stakes. And on inspecting this closer, White found the word Croatoan carved into the wood. He started looking around the settlement a bit more carefully, and he found that on a tree the letters CRO were carved. And taking those signs together, White took this to mean that they had voluntarily relocated to Croatoan Island, which was located further south.
Yes, because no cross. No sign that something suspicious had happened. So this was a voluntary move, and he knows where they've gone. They've gone with the tribe that they were relatively friendly with. So immediately there's no cause for alarm, especially because there's no dead bodies there this time. No signs of violence, but they've just disappeared. 117 people have gone.
And the party then obviously went straight back to their ship that evening with the plan to go to Croatoan the following day. But when they get to their ship, the anchor cable snapped, leaving the ship with only one working cable and anchor, and there was this considerable risk of shipwreck. And so they had to set off straight back for England. It just must have been the most difficult thing to get back on that ship and turn back for home.
When they got back to England, the problem is that the backing that would be needed to properly investigate what was happening in Roanoke just wasn't there. This was a difficult time for Sir Walter Raleigh. He was briefly imprisoned in the Tower after falling afoul of Queen Elizabeth. And after his release, he became really caught up with the search for El Dorado.
Did a lot of chain smoking as well,
Doing a lot of chain smoking, eating a lot of potatoes, I imagine. But it really suited him to leave the fate of Roanoke vague, because as long as they were theoretically alive, he still had his charter. So he had zero motivation to send a follow-up expedition to see what had happened. He was like, yeah, it's fine. The colony's going great. Don't take away my charter. I am going to be sending all of my ships to go and search for El Dorado.
Okay, so what happened then to the people that had tried to colonise Roanoke? There's basically 3 big theories. One is they were murdered by Spaniards, but if that happened, then the event weirdly went completely unrecorded in Spanish historical accounts, which is odd because they were running a very competent navy. Second option, they were killed by Indians. Highly possible, except there was no evidence left behind, and they left an indication on the tree that suggested they'd gone compliantly. In 2012, the British Museum re-examined one of White's coastal maps, and by using X-ray spectroscopy, revealed a patch on the map under which was a 4-pointed blue and red star, suggestions that could have been a fort and there could have been some sort of skirmish there. The third option is simply assimilation. They became part of the tribes around them. And there are reports afterwards, 17th century reports, which were ignored for hundreds of years really at the time, but look back on now seem like, that then, where explorers noted natives with the traits of Caucasians, grey eyes, blonde hair, which obviously, would not have been part of their genetic makeup.
And after the Jamestown colonists set up in 1607, they did make several attempts to look for the lost colony, but their searches failed to find these possibly fabled locations. But the darker theory, that they had been murdered by indigenous people, started to gain momentum, particularly after the Powhatans then attacked and destroyed Jamestown in 1622. The English mindset towards the native people really took a turn for the worse around that time, and so the idea that they had simply cruelly wiped out the Roanoke colony started to gain a bit more traction. And the idea that they had assimilated into native groups just became more and more troubling under this new vision where, the indigenous people were seen as hostile adversaries. And that kind of called into question the whole colonization project. So this was really a theory that people didn't want to embrace. There is a much lengthier narrative, purportedly written by Ellen Adair, mother of Virginia, to her father, John White. In the 1930s, a total of 48 inscribed tablets were unearthed, supposedly messages from Ellen Adair to her father. The first of these so-called Adair stones appeared in North Carolina in a riverbed, supposedly. And it says that the group was decimated by hostile native people and that they had fled inland. Further stones then began to appear as far away as Georgia, where the Roanoke survivors had supposedly migrated. As you might suspect, These were later exposed as forgeries, although it's still possible the first one was genuine. Apparently that hasn't been conclusively proven, and partly they were able to prove this based on anachronisms in the text. The words trail and reconnoitre in particular were highlighted as words that would have been unknown to Tudor writers.
Well, they couldn't carve more than one word on a tree at a time. I don't think they're going to be carving stones, are they? I think they had that technology.
Tomorrow.
The matter went before the ultimate arbiter, the International Association of Ice Cream Manufacturers.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.
Hello, I'm Ellis James.
I'm Tom Crane.
And I'm Chris Scull, and we're the hosts of Oh What a Time, the new history podcast where we try to answer the question, was the past absolutely rubbish?
From life at sea to parenting, from pets to crime to adventurers, and we ask the questions other history shows are scared to.
How would you feel about consummating your marriage in front of your in-laws in medieval Britain?
Already done it. How would your weedy little arms fare as part of the crew on a Viking longboat?
And would you fancy a night out to see a sapient pig in Victorian Britain? Obviously, yes.
This is Oh What a Time, the podcast that the Times newspaper described as very funny, if less scholarly than its rivals.
Life is tough in 2023, so give us a listen and remind yourself that things could be so much worse.
Oh What a Time, available every Monday wherever you get your podcasts.